Okay. So everybody has done introduction, or anybody want to
Yes,
introduce
Mataji,
themselves?
everybody is done. So you may introduce the Prabhuji also. So dear devotees, today we are very fortunate. We have His Great Chaitanya Charan Prabhu from Chapati, India, and Prabhuji is going to enlighten us from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 8, Chapter 17, verse number 1.
Yes, Prabhuji. Prabhuji is fixing his internet.
Uh-huh.
Until then, we have a new join Shehnaz Mataji and Priya Mohini Mataji. So let us welcome them by our traditional way, chanting three times Haribol. Haribol.
Hari
Haribol,
Bol, Hari
Haribol,
Bol, Hari
Haribol.
Bol.
And I will read a brief introduction of Prabhuji, His Grace Chaitanya Charan Prabhu. So Chaitanya Charan Prabhu is a speaker, mentor, and monk from Chowpatty Temple. He is a spiritual teacher for nearly 30 years in the Bhakti Yoga tradition. Through its modern day expression, ISKCON Krishna Conscious, I- International Society for Krishna Consciousness. Author of 30 books that explain the relevance of Vedic wisdom texts, including the Bhagavad Gita and the Ramayana. He is the author of the world's only daily blog on the Bhagavad Gita, gitadaily.com, where he has written some 5,000 articles on the Gita. He invited as a speaker at TEDx World Peace Conference, UNESCO, Intel, Google, Microsoft, Salesforce, Stanford, Princeton University, Yale, Harvard University, MIT, and Cambridge University. He gives 400 talks across 100 cities in 4 continents every year. So we are so fortunate to have His Grace Chaitanya Charan Prabhu. And Prabhuji is fixing his internet. So till then he said that we can read the verse and translation. So
Shri Prabhuji has joined.
he joined. But yeah. Prabhuji, you want me to read, or you can
Yeah,
read?
yeah. Okay, yeah. I'm grateful to be here with all of you today. Hare Krishna. Actually, I also use a tablet for writing, so I'm trying to set that up.
Okay.
My internet is limited, so you can continue reading, Mataji, please. Till
Okay,
you
Prabhuji.
can continue reading, please.
Yeah. Hare Krishna. Sri Shuka Uvacha. Srimad Bhagavatam 8.17.1. Sri Shuka Uvacha. Ityukta saditi rajan swabhartra kashyapena vai अन्वतिष्ठत् व्रतमिदं द्वादशाहमत इंद्रिता. Translation by Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Srila Sukadeva Goswami said, O king, after Aditi was thus advised by her husband Kashyapa Muni, she strictly followed his instructions without laziness and in this way performed the Payovrata ritualistic ceremony. Hare Krishna.
Am I audible and visible to everyone?
Yes, Prabhuji. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Hare Krishna,
My
Prabhuji.
tablet is still
Dhanwad.
not setting up, and I'll start.
Welcome to.
Om Jnanatmirandasya Jnananjanishalaakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prishthaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshitariणे वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shrivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. And dear Lord, please guide us all so that we can understand your message, respond to it, our heart and soul. Hare Krishna. So it's wonderful to be here with all of you today. And one of the themes I have been pondering when we reread and hear the Bhagavatam repeatedly is how the book is structured. Now, when you look at the structure of the book, there are different ways to look at it. Okay, in this chapter, there are this many verses. This has one section. Well, this section is about 1 to 5 is about this, 7 to 12 is about this, 18 to 25 verses about this. You know, that is, if we study literary theory, that means how books are studied. That is, if you have an onion, that's just the first layer of the onion you are taking out. And it's important to take out that layer of onion. But there is so much more. So one of the things is to consider why in a book, why is a particular story included? Why is a particular story not just included, but why does this particular story occupy this much space? Like, basically, if you approach scripture not only like a reader, but also like an author, to see what is the original author, the original editor, the original speaker doing. Then, if you consider a novel or if you consider a movie, then there are some scenes which are elaborately depicted. There, where it's not just one person doing something and the other person reacting to it, but there are maybe 7, 8 people other around. All of them, how do they react? What is the impact of that? That means the author, the editor, the movie maker, whoever is behind it, they want that scene to be emphasized. And on the other hand, there are some scenes, which are some incidents, which are basically described as happening in the background. Oh, this happened over there. And then, oh my God, this happened. This kingdom was defeated. Or this person died. Like, say, some heroes are killed off screen. Just get the news. Not heroes, maybe some supporting cast in a TV series, which is going on for a long time, or a movie, or whatever. So then that means that's an important incident, but it's not that important. And that's why so little screen space was given to it. Screen time was given to it. So now, if we consider from that editorial perspective, Shukdev Goswami doesn't have a lot of time. Not as Parikshit Maharaj. They have 7 days. And technically speaking, it is not that Shukdev Goswami was necessarily speaking continuously for 7 days. That it is that they would all do their sandhya. They would all take their baths. So now Parikshit Maharaj had taken a vow to fast till death. But that does not necessarily mean that all the sages around him had taken the fast, or that all the attending sages had taken the vow. So, logically speaking, if you consider that 700 verses of the Bhagavad Gita can be recited about 1.5 to 2.5 hours at the most. So now, if we consider, that means say 1,000 verses can be recited in 3 hours. If we consider 18,000 verses, that would mean about 54 hours. So that's definitely not 7 days. And technically, if we go forward, the numerology, the numerical count of the Bhagavatam is not exactly 18,000 verses. It's a whole different subject. There are different ways of counting by which the 18,000 figure can be vindicated. But the point is that literally speaking, it's not 18,000 verses. So it is, now of course we can say the Bhagavatam verses are longer and there is story. But there is, if you look at the commentaries, it's clear that there is a indication, or not clear, it's indication that these are Brahmanas, so they will have their Brahminical duties. And Parikshit Maharaj is like he has taken what is traditionally called as the Prayavrata. Prayavrata is the vow of fasting till death. But that's because he is near death. It's not that everybody else has to take Prayavrata at the same time. So then the question comes up that so there is a certain limited amount of time in which the hearing is happening. So maybe it's not 54 hours, it's 58 hours, it's 60 hours, it's 100 hours. Maybe it's the verses are recited slower. And whatever it is, the point is that there is a certain limited amount of time. And in that limited amount of time, which stories are included and which stories are highlighted, that becomes quite significant. So now if we consider the eighth canto is quite close to the 10th canto. And in the 10th canto, we have Krishna Lila, and the 10th canto itself is the longest part of the Bhagavatam. It is 90 chapters. So out of 335 chapters of the Bhagavatam, 90 chapters itself is quite large. Quite large. Quite large. Quite large. Quite large. Quite large. Can you make me a co-host in this other tablet? That's where I'll be writing and drawing some things.
Yes, Tolu. How did you log in, Prabhu, from the tablet? Oh, okay, I see
I'll
that.
just send a message from that one so that you'll know to identify me.
Yes,
In
Tolu.
chat, I send a message.
I did that.
Okay, I'm a co-host now. Good.
Thank you.
Thank you. So now, when Parikshit, so that is 1/3 of the 10th canto, 1/3 of the whole Bhagavatam that is going to come. And then after that, there is the whole 11th canto, which is also about Krishna. Broadly, we can say the 10th canto is about Krishna Lila, the 11th canto is about Krishna Shiksha. Now, in spite of this situation being very much there, there are stories in the 8th canto, 9th canto, and then we come to the 10th canto. And in some ways, the stories that are there, so there are so many incidents that have happened throughout history. And now we can talk about modern contemporary history. We can talk about the Vedic history. Whichever way you look at it, history is always complicated. And every book of history is a book of selection. Selection means which wars are to be emphasized, which meetings among generals are to be emphasized. So that is always a selection that has to be done. So in fact, any history book, it's a selective account. So if we consider in the Mahabharata, there are many discussions that are described, and they're very important. That say, for example, when Abhimanyu is just destroying the Kaurava army, at that time, the Kaurava leaders come together. Shakuni, Karna, Duryodhan, and then there is also, of course, Drona, who suggests that finally you'll have to attack him with 6 warriors. Now that's what is done. But now in the Mahabharata, there's no description that when Abhimanyu is killed, does Drona regret what he has done? There is no meeting between, say, Drona and Arjuna. Arjuna does not go and ask his guru, now, how could you lead the plan? You taught me martial skills, and one part of what you taught me was the ethics of how to fight a war. And how could you violate the ethics? So Arjuna's anger is described, and the next day Arjuna and Drona meet in war, and Arjuna is quite agitated and wants to fight and settle the score with Drona at that time itself. Krishna says, no, you are taking a particular vow right now. You have to move forward. So Arjuna's anger towards Jayadratha is described, by which he takes revenge. He takes revenge on that. He settles the score. But the people who actually killed Abhimanyu, who's the 6 warriors who attacked, what is Arjuna's emotions toward them? So there are so many things in any incident, that any book, that are not described. So any history book is a selection. So one of the most striking such examples of selection is in the Bhagavatam itself, the entire Mahabharat war is bypassed. What do I mean by bypassed? That while the Mahabharata war is going on, the Bhagavatam describes Balramji's pilgrimage. And that's it's so weird at one level. Like right now, there's a whole war going on in the Middle East. And there's a prominent news website which describes some gang war happening in Chicago. And that occupies not just the headline, but so many pages afterwards. And this whole war in the Middle East is not described only. What is going on over here? So now every time there's a selection like this, there is a rationale for the selection. So the rationale is that in the Mahabharata war, Parikshit's father Abhimanyu has been brutally killed. And it's like there's a legacy of unfairness in life. The Pandavas themselves were unfairly exiled. The Pandavas were unfairly persecuted. Then we have Abhimanyu was unfairly killed. And then now Parikshit is going to be unfairly killed. So the Pandavas were exiled, and so now this kind of story. Now what happens is the focus is on the element of mercy. So now what happens is that in the unfairness happens in everyone's life. Now Krishna's mercy is visible in the Pandavas' life. But Krishna's mercy, where is it in Abhimanyu's life? We could say that Abhimanyu had the courage to fight, and ultimately we are souls. And for one who dies so gloriously, that person will get elevated destination, will be liberated. And all that is true. But the mercy is not visible at the physical level. So what happens is Parikshit Maharaj, Shukdev Goswami wants to boost the Krishna consciousness, or Shukdev Goswami wants to boost the Krishna consciousness of Parikshit Maharaj. And that's why he tells the stories where Krishna's mercy is very directly evident. And he avoids telling some stories where that mercy is not evident so directly. It is there, but it's not evident. So, for example, if some young devotee has fallen sick and has got cancer and is going through some serious surgery, and we have the whole devotee community praying, then we may tell that devotee the story of, say, there was another young devotee who had cancer and everybody prayed for them, and that devotee is also prayerful when they're going to the treatment, and that devotee recovered. Now, there can be also stories of not just of people for whom everybody prayed for and still they passed away. Now, we won't be telling those stories at that time. Now, is this selection deception? No, it's not deception. The selection is to pursue a particular intention. So, that what is our purpose? How can we serve that particular person at that particular time in enhancing their consciousness? So, selection is a function of intention. We can say that our intention is what drives our selection. And in our intention, what we want to do is, now sometimes the intention itself can be deceptive, but the intention can also be sincere. Intention can be sincere or it can be insincere. That varies. Insincere even to the point of being deceptive. But so now I have talked about two distinct points here till now. One is that from artistic perspective, selection has significance. And from an ethical perspective, selection has significance. So selection is important from both perspectives. So from an artistic perspective, it conveys emphasis. A particular scene is elaborated. That means a particular incident has more screen time, more pages. Then that indicates that this is what is emphasis. And then the ethical aspect is what is the intention. So what do we want and what do we want to emphasize? What do we really want to do? And which part is important in pursuing that? So from that perspective, if we consider the stories that are, we can talk about three levels in the Bhagavatam stories. There are stories that are mentioned. There are stories that are summarized. And there are stories that are described. So mention means, for example, in just a passing reference that, oh, this is how this was done, and this is how it happened at that particular time. So these are the mention means that they may be in other Puranas, other Itihasas, they are there. And Parikshit Maharaj is not an ignorant person. So they are elaborated in other Puranas, and it's expected that Parikshit Maharaj knows about them and he understands. Say, for example, in today's world, if somebody mentions something from the Second World War or about Hitler, that's just a reference. Or it could be about cricket, it could be about tennis, it could be even about some movies. So those are references and it connects with the audience in some level. So they just mentioned. So some stories are mentioned, some stories are summarized. Now, in many ways, we can say the Ramayana is summarized. And that will happen in the ninth canto. Now, in that case, the story is summarized for the purpose of illustrating certain, or why is it summarized and not described? He says, you already know about the story. You already heard about it. So now it means that Shukdev Goswami also knows that Parikshit Maharaj is not an ignorant person. He knows the story. Now, the stories that are described, that's where things become interesting. So here, let's look at the Srimad Bhagavatam quickly now. So we are in the 8th canto now. Now, before I go into the structure of the Bhagavatam, let me do one more thing. That this, as I said, when we want to look at the structure,
Not audible. Prabhuji, Hare Krishna. It is not audible actually.
Prabhuji got disconnected from one of his system, Prabhuji.
Yeah. It's true, there is an iPad guest. Not sure if that.
Ramarasika, can you just call
Yeah.
and tell Prabhuji?
Yes, I'm going to.
Yeah, please, on the other phone. Yeah, from the.
video, there will be audio over here.
Okay, sure, Prabhuji. So, Hare Krishna, dear devotees. Prabhuji is joining from Nashik, and there was a power cut off. So now I called him, and we will continue with this like this. The Yes, Prabhuji, please go ahead. Can you all hear me and Prabhuji?
We can hear only you, Shamarasika, not Prabhuji.
Please talk. Then.
Okay, so the structure of the Bhagavatam I was discussing. So
Yes, it's audible now. Yeah.
when you talk about the Bhagavatam, essentially what is happening is that the Bhagavatam is a conversation between Shukdev Goswami and Parishit Maharaj, and it starts especially the third canto, move towards something more chronological rather than simply sequential. Whenever they see the Bhagavatam, if you want to use modern language, it is more like a podcast than a class. A podcast involves spontaneous question answers. And as those question answers evolve and grow, the session also grows. So like that, the Bhagavatam keeps moving forward. And now from the third canto onwards, actually from the where the process of creation is described, from there onward, the Bhagavatam starts becoming a description of the history of one day of Brahma. So that creation itself is described in the first canto. And after that is described, and subsequently, things move forward in terms of how events happen within that day of Brahma. The third canto till the end of seventh canto, actually all that is described is the various descendants of the first Manu, that is Swayambhu Manu. Now this does not necessarily mean that all the incidents that are described in the first canto, in between cantos 3 to 7, are incidents that happened during the time of Swayambhu Manu. But what it means is that in the course of that overall meta discussion, there are other stories also told. So when Parikshit Maharaj is asking questions about hell, then he tells the story about Ajamil. That story is described overall while describing the conversation, while describing the historical narrative of Swayambhu Manu.
Okay. My tab audio has come back, so I'll just turn off the phone. Once the phone video comes back, I'll join from there also. Can you make me a co-host here, please? Are you able to hear me now?
Yes, Prabhuji, we can hear you. I will make you a host. Yes, Prabhuji, your co-host.
So here, the structure of the Bhagavatam can be seen in 3 levels. There is a conversational structure. That the Bhagavatam is a book of conversations. So we could say that in the conversational structure, we have the conversation between Parikshit Maharaj and Shukdev Goswami. And of course, that is framed within the conversation of, I'm just depicting this much bigger way, but it is within the framework of the conversation between Suta Goswami and the sages of Naimisharanya. So now within this conversational, we can go to the chronological. Chronological is the time wise. So there it is basically one day of Brahma. But one day of, this is where earlier I said history is always, a narration of history is always selection. So if we consider, this starts from the third canto till seventh canto. Third canto till seventh canto, it is Swayambhu Manu. And then you'll notice that in the 8th canto, there is a rapid fast forward, and from the 8th canto onwards till the 12th canto, it actually goes to our particular Manu. So it is Vaivasvat Manu now. So now again, it's important to understand this point that whatever is the discussion, I'm not saying here that all the incidents happen during this phase on all the incidents happen over here. Rather, the discussions are going on over here between some two people, and during that discussion, there's a recall of some other incident. So that's how the story can go elsewhere also. But overall, the principle is that there is a lot of editorial discretion that is there. So, for example, we could say, why are all the other Manus not described? The editorial discretion is the technical term. It could be, you could say, speaker discretion, author discretion. That the author is deciding. The narrator discretion, we can say, who's deciding. Now, from a conceptual perspective, that what is the purpose of the Bhagavatam? The purpose of the Bhagavatam is twofold. Now, you could say the first purpose is to tell Parikshit Maharaj duty at death. But that is told that is told in the 2nd canto itself very clearly. And there's no confusion about that. It's like, say, sometimes a devotee has got some very serious health problem. And one of the biggest challenges that happens is that at that time, multiple devotees who are with that devotee, maybe in their community, they all have different advice. Oh, you should try allopathy. No, you should try naturopathy. You should try homeopathy. You should try this. You should try that. And I know sometimes, I know that right now there is a situation where there is one spiritual master who is very sick, and he's so sick that he's not in the position to, he's not even properly conscious. He's not able to take decisions properly. And then this very bitter war among the disciples about how they should treat the spiritual master. And some disciples were accusing the other disciples that, you are so eager to become a guru that you want our spiritual master to die. That's why you are recommending this treatment. That treatment is not tested. And that's the same accusation that other disciples are doing to the guru. Other disciples are doing to the first group of disciples. So this can become very nasty about what is to be done at the time of death. So now there is some proposal that all senior leaders should clearly write their, not just their will, that is already the GBC is emphasizing on that, but even the decisions about their life and their health, who should be taking those decisions. The duty of death, I think there's some background noise over here, and then we stop.
Yes, Prabhuji. From Rome.
Please mute Roma Saxena.
Okay. So now the duty at death is there's no conflict. And then Parikshit Maharaj is told that you should remember Lord Hari. So then the purpose of the Bhagavatam conceptually is not to tell what to do. That is a background purpose. But a bigger purpose is to help do it. So if you have to remember Lord Hari, then I will help you remember Lord Hari by telling you various stories. That becomes the theme of the Bhagavatam. And now within that theme, let's look at the 8th canto now. Gajendra's prayers of surrender. If you see that 3 chapters, and it's very Vishnu centered. It's very centered on the theme, which is among all the stories in the Bhagavatam, Gajendra's story is conceptually the most similar to Parikshit Maharaj. How Parikshit himself is like a glorious king like Gajendra. And suddenly, Gajendra is such a powerful king, and suddenly Alligator catches it, and this alligator seems to have incredible power. Gajendra thinks I'll easily shake it off, and he's just not able to shake it off. And finally, he turns to the Lord and prays. And then glorious are the prayers, and then the Lord comes and delivers him. So we can see the correlation between Gajendra's situation and Parikshit Maharaj's situation very easily. Now, if you look at the next story, now we could say this is a story that has many parts. It starts from chapter 6 onwards, and now right now we are in chapter 17. So here, what we will see is this goes till chapter, it starts from chapter 5 and goes till chapter 23. Then Matsya is a separate story. Now, within this story, there are many detours that happen. So if you consider detours means that many other things are told over there. So for example, Lord Shiva's glory, Lord Shiva's interaction with Mohini Murti is there, the churning of the milk ocean, that all pastime comes up. But the background of it is what? Is Bali Maharaj. Now, if you see what is going to happen, that this particular chapter, which is called, which is about executing the Payavrats process of sacrifice, process of worship, and the Lord agreeing to become Aditi's son. So if you see this whole story, which I said goes from chapter 5 onwards till chapter 23. So it almost occupies the entire canto of the Srimad canto. So chapter 5 till chapter 23, then there are 24 chapters over here. In one way, it is the common thread over is Bali and the Devatas. So the Danavas and Devatas, but among the leaders, the Danavas is Bali. So Bali and Devatas is the primary storyline. And within that, how the Devatas sometimes become powerful, sometimes Bali. So initially what happens is Bali is powerful. And then the Devatas become so powerful. The Devatas become so powerful that Bali is dead. But then Bali is revived. And the Bali becomes powerful. And now, in the background, a process is being described of how Bali's opponent will again become powerful. So the Lord has intervened in various places. The Lord has intervened initially on the side of the Devatas, and now the Lord is going to intervene again on the side of the Devatas. But the Payovrat sacrifice that is described, the context of this is that the Lord Vamana appears on the side of the Devatas. And there is a ritual process by which his presence is evoked. But Bali eventually doesn't follow any ritual, but Bali exhibits surrender. Surrender at the most difficult of times. So, and that surrender is what wins the heart of the Lord. And then the Lord becomes his Dwarapal. The Lord becomes his doorkeeper. The Lord gives the material opulence to Indra, to the side where the Lord is invoked through a particular sacrifice. That now, if you see in the purports, Prabhupada doesn't focus too much on the technicalities of sacrifice. Now, when the Bhagavatam describes the technicalities, what is the point of it? That there are lots of rituals, the specifics are involved, and the specifics need to be honored when somebody is adopting a particular sacrifice. But it is described about Shukdev Goswami also that he was very learned in the Vedas, but he was not very good at reciting particular Vedic mantras with precision. And yet, what mattered was that not the precision, but his devotion. And his devotion was so great that he was victorious. That was what mattered eventually. That's why he was selected to speak. So the point I'm making is that ultimately how devotion triumphs. So the Payovrat ceremony is described in so much detail And on hearing some ceremony being described like this in significant amount of detail, Shukdev goes, Parikshit Maharaj will start thinking, hey, I'm going to die. Should I also be performing some ritual? No, he doesn't have to. Because Parikshit Maharaj's position is similar to Bali Maharaj's position. Bali Maharaj also is treated in one sense unfairly. Unfair is what? The Lord comes and says, I want charity, 3 steps, and the Lord takes everything from him. And yet, Parikshit Maharaj stays firm. He stays honest. He stays, just as Bali Maharaj stays firm, so Parikshit Maharaj is also being encouraged to similarly stay firm. And that he will be delivered ultimately by the Lord's mercy. So the selection of the stories, sometimes the elaborate twists and turns of the story that are described, are ultimately to emphasize one point, that you need to just surrender to the Lord, remember the Lord, cherish the Lord in the heart, hear about the Lord, and by that everything will work out. So I'll summarize what I discussed today. The Bhagavatam's emphasis, that's what we try to understand. Understanding Bhagavatam's emphasis through its structure. So I talked about 3 main points over here. I talked about how any kind of book, any kind of history always involves selection. And that selection is a reflection, it's based on, you could say, the artistic aspect and there's the moral or the ethics aspect. So art is what the reader wants, or the editor, the producer, author wants to emphasize. The ethics reveals what is their motive, what is their intention. And so I talked about elaborately. Then I talked about the Bhagavatam structure. And we can understand the Bhagavatam structure from 3 perspectives. There's a conversational way to understand the Bhagavatam structure. There's a chronological way to understand the Bhagavatam structure. And then there is a conceptual way to understand it. So conversationally, it's primarily with Parikshit Maharaj Sukadeva Goswami. So it's more like a podcast. So it goes over different things. Chronologically, it is a history of one Brahma's day. And within that, there are 2 Manus that are focused on. Conceptually, it is all to boost his Krishna consciousness, not so much to guide him to remember the Lord, but to help him remember the Lord. And then the current verse, the Payovrat sacrifice that is described, the Payovrat is described, that is a small story within a larger story of Bali's surrender. And the point is that while ritual is important, and by ritual, Lord Vishnu appears over there and is welcomed. But by surrender, so the Lord comes over here, but the Lord stays over here. All at one level, he takes everything away from Parili Maharaj, and he gives everything and much more to him. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Is there any quick question?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, Tanu Pranam, all glory, Shri Srila Prabhupada Guru Maharaj. Thank you for wonderful class about Srimad Bhagavatam, different perspective of understanding. Yeah, I would like to ask devotees if they have any question or any comment, any realization. Oh, meanwhile, I would like to, as a devotee, when we read Srimad Bhagavatam, whether a particular pastime or from starting, one way is I was told, let's only read first in a story form, only the translation, and then hear what Guru Maharaj has spoken about that Leela, and then relish that, understand that. And then after that, go back again to that same chapter and then read throughout with the translation and purport, so that you can understand both ways, what Maharaj has said, what Prabhupada has said in purport, and clearly understand end to end. Is that the right approach, Prabhuji?
See, one thing is, I don't think there is any right approach to study the Bhagavatam. We have to see what enhances our Krishna consciousness. So, but I would say broadly, what has been historically done is books are a very recent phenomena. Hmm? Traditionally, it has the oral tradition has what has conveyed the Bhagavatam is for millennia. And that's not just about the Bhagavatam, all religious books. That the printing press came only recently, and after that, books were written and books were read, and previously commentaries were written, but commentaries were by scholars for scholars. So, in that sense, the oral tradition is what has kept the book alive and relevant. And we cannot downplay the importance of the oral tradition. So, having said now, how best to combine the oral tradition with the written tradition? That is something which each individual has to decide. So, what you said is one way you get a map of the territory by reading the stories, then you have a personal tour guide, and then we have a historical tour guide. That is Prabhupada's commentaries. That's one way to go it. So, but I would say it's always important to have a the oral tradition complement the written tradition. Without the oral tradition, our study will stay very intellectual, very academic, and it will not really enter into the mood of the Bhagavatam. So that's why Sajati Sangha is important, that like-minded association that can help us to understand, okay, what is going on in the Bhagavatam? How can I personally connect with it? So like you may have noticed, the way I connect with it is I'm an author, so I connect with as an author. And as an author, further, yes, I'm a sadhaka, I'm a brahmachari, I'm an Indian, I am an intellectual, all those things come in, and then I'll connect with particular things over there. So we have to see in what mode of approach to the Bhagavatam does the Bhagavatam speak to us. And then that's how is the best way to connect for us. Okay. So thank you so much for this opportunity to share the Bhagavatam with all of you. And Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Hare Krishna.
Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki jai.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Gaur
We are so
Premanande.
fortunate to have you today. And so let us chant. Prabhuji is so busy, but he gave after follow up of 1 year, we got this date. So thank
Thank
you.
you for your persistence. Hare
Okay.
Krishna Mataji. Thank you so much.
So here,
Please chant 3 times Haribol for Prabhuji to come again and keep
Hari
his
Bol.
association. Haribol.
Haribol, Haribol,
Haribol,
Haribol.
Haribol.
Thank
Thank
you,
you. Hare
Prabhuji.
Krishna.
Thank you,
So much.
Prabhuji, for the wonderful
Thank you,
Thank you so
speech.
much.
Prabhuji.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Prabhuji.
Happy to be of
Hare
service.
Krishna,
Hare
Hare
Krishna,
Bol,
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna.
His Grace Chaitanya Charan Prabhu ki jai. All the
Jai.
devotees, Hare Krishna. Vancha
Hare Krishna.
Kalpatarusya Krupa Sindhu Vacha. Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavibhyo Namo Namaha. Anantakoti Vaishnava ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Jai.
Srila Bhagavatam ki jai. Hari Bol. Hare Krishna.